How does nature respond to the massive level of inputs that agriculture has thrown at it over the last decades?
Agriculture, what's it? No, the inputs, massive amounts of chemicals, right? Um, Obviously, when it rains, the streams, the creeks, the rivers get filled up with a lot of these chemicals, run off into the lakes, and what does nature do? It fights back, an explosion of bacteria to digest these problems and try to get that water, that lake, that ecosystem back into a state of health. And so when you go to the doctor with an infection, a bacterial or fungal infection, that's nature saying you are, well, you're a defective organism and we want to digest you and put you back in the ground where you belong and start
Mm,
over.
mm.
So what's causing it? Nutrient deficiencies and toxicities, pretty much always across the board. So if we address those things, if we know how to remove the toxins and put the really high grade minerals, vitamins, the real nutrients, not the synthetics, not the rock dust. We're talking the real stuff after it's been digested by biology. That's when magic starts to happen.
And what can we do to kickstart the biology on our operations to overcome that response?
There's a couple different sources that we recommend to people when we consult with them, things like that. And then inoculating it with the biology that we have in our boxes, of course, and the nutrients for the quick snap, bringing things back to life quickly. But yeah, the dry spreads combined with the foliar spray is really how to do it. And people can do it either quickly if they really want to go all in right away, or they can do it gradually over a period of time, make it more affordable, those sort of things. But putting all those minerals, all those nutrients back, and then putting reinstalling the biology into the soil and letting it work its magic, that's really it's fun to watch. It's fun to get, have people call me and go, the cows are stacking right on top of everything you guys sent me. So, that's nice.
All that and more on this episode 518 of the Working Cows podcast, brought to you by Ranch Right, Kip Fladland Horsemanship, and Sunshine Bible Academy.
Welcome to the podcast that gives producers a platform to discuss and share paradigm-challenging practices. Practices that have increased the effectiveness of their operation and the joy that their families have received from this lifestyle.
Hi, everybody. It's Clay Connery, host of the Working Cows podcast. Very excited to be joined today by Pat Miletich. If you know that name, you probably know it from the mixed martial arts days, training some of the greats, Jens Pulver, Tim Sylvia, Matt Hughes, Jeremy Horn, Robbie Lawler, I think, back in the day. So it's just really a treat to be able to sit down with him and talk about something else that he's passionate about, and something that he was passionate about for personal reasons, as he will share, and that is soil health and its connection to human health. So looking forward to sharing this conversation with you, with Pat Miletich, right now. Pat, thanks for joining me today on the Working Cows podcast.
My pleasure, Clay. Thank you for having me, buddy.
Yeah. Obviously, maybe not obviously to everybody, but for me, it's a little surreal, right? My early 20s was spent watching a lot of UFC fights with you ringside at that point, and then obviously some highlights from the earlier days of the UFC and you in the ring. So kind of fun to have you on today. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, a lot of people are a little taken back that I'm so heavily involved in soil and environmental and animal health and human health and all that. But yeah, I love it.
Bettendorf, Iowa connection. I mean, is that kind of where what piqued your interest, or how did you get into doing what you're doing now?
A lot of people in my family were farmers down in southern Iowa, down around Albia and those areas. And, I spent a lot of time, obviously, on family farms, cousins' farms, all that sort of stuff. But Bettendorf, Iowa is a conveyor belt into basically the Division I sports programs around the country. I mean, Bettendorf was blue chippers coming out of there constantly. So my whole life growing up, I wanted to be great at wrestling. I wanted to be great at football, and those were my goals. And I had difficulty breathing, and it held me back quite a bit. I was working harder than everybody else because of that, but I just couldn't reach the absolute pinnacle that my work ethic, I guess, would have matched. So I was very frustrated growing up, and I got to about the age of 19 or 20, and came back from 20 is when I came back from school to help my mother who had heart problems. At the time, started working 3 jobs, all that sort of stuff, doing martial arts though, because I was still, had the competitive desire. Anyway, I was getting ready to turn professional in kickboxing at the time, and I thought, well, I better be able to breathe in this. I mean, the worst thing that can happen in a wrestling match is you get beat or get pinned, but in a kickboxing match, you get sent to the hospital, right? So I did a lot of research for a long time and put together a natural protocol that I thought would solve my problems potentially. And 10 days later, I could breathe. I went from breathing through a straw full of mucus to what felt like a crystal clear PVC tube. And all of a sudden, I could literally do anything I wanted to athletically, which obviously led to a national championship in kickboxing, a world title in the UFC, and then, continued research in environmental and human, performance and health and all those things, which led to a lot more world champions, of course, and working with really high level military folks and a lot of other professional athletes. So, yeah, it's been a journey.
Is that still connected? I mean, is that journey ongoing, using the same kind of things that you developed early on to help yourself, connected to what you're doing now?
There are certainly components, it's all building blocks really is what 40 years of research is what I've been through. And the first 20 years of my life was just suffering and not figuring out why, and listening to, medical professionals tell me that there wasn't a whole lot they could do for me at the time. More than anything, though, it's just constantly learning. And the more I learn, the more I understand I don't know. The soil is an extremely complicated, while we can break it down simply, it's an extremely complicated, amazing universe that is supposed to exist there. And of course, that soil is, everything from there on out, plants, insects, animals, human beings. The environment will dictate our genetic expression and our immune function, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. I've talked to, many of the leading voices in soil ecology. And, when I started this journey 8 years ago, for the podcast, it was in a double handful of healthy soil. There are as many microorganisms as there are people on the universe or on the planet.
Sure.
And now we're down to a teaspoon, in a teaspoon of healthy soil. And that the healthy soil hasn't changed. It's what we understand is in the healthy soil that's changed. We're still learning. And I mean, in 8 years, we're in a lot smaller area. We understand there's as many healthy living organisms as there are people on the planet. And I asked one of the leading voices a while back, I said, where are we at in our understanding of what's happening in the soil? And she said, I think we're at the tip of the iceberg. I think we understand less than 10% of what's happening in healthy soil. And she would be pointed to by many as one of the leading voices. So, I mean, even if they are still learning, we all also are still learning, right?
Yeah. And I think a lot of people have lost the ability to follow their intuition as well. There's a lot of connection to really the power of the universe, the power of our creator, and the power of nature that we really should be paying attention to. And also paying attention to observable results, So I was always measuring. My laboratory was pretty unfriendly confines of training facilities and octagons and cages around the world, right? There's no room to not be in good enough shape to deal with what's coming at you, because you've got the most dangerous human beings generally on the planet that are trying to send you to the hospital for a paycheck. So that's, and conversely, a rancher or a farmer who has to pay their bills, who could lose everything if they don't do things correctly. It's that same pressure, right? So just, I'm all about doing everything naturally to create the best superhuman I can create, and then turn them loose on the world. And that's the exact same thing for soil.
Let's take a quick break and hear a word from our sponsor today, Ranch Right. We've been telling you for years about the power of working with the team at Ranch Right to help you acquire actionable financials so you can build a profitable business and pass on generational wealth. Don't just take our word for it. Listen to some of these responses on a recent survey of Ranch Right's clientele. 97% of them said they understood their financials better as a result of working with Ranch Right. 91% said Ranch Right saves them time. And over again in the survey, these ranchers say the value of working with a team at Ranch Right is the team. Many of them remarked that the conversations with their Ranch Right team member helped them see the opportunities they had for business growth and success. They used words like eye-opening and helpful to describe the reports, saying that they had more clarity about the next step as a result of the product of Ranch Right's work. Head over to ranchrightllc.com today to book your discovery call and see how Ranch Right can speed up your path to profitability. Let's dive into that. What does that look like? Where do you find people as far as where they're at in their journey, and how do you help them take the next steps?
Yeah, well, I mean, I find the general population these days, I'm old enough to observe from the 70s into current day, the state of affairs that physical health, mental health, hormonal health is in for Americans, of course, and it's pretty bad. It's obviously pretty bad. We've got a lot of problems. $5 trillion a year now spent on healthcare, which is ridiculous.
Or sick care, depending on how you want
to. Yeah. And so that most people out there don't even know how they're supposed to feel. They don't know the power that they're capable of. They don't know the athletic endurance, the connection, the mental connection, the clarity, all these things that happen when you get the cells cleaned out, you reset and rebuild DNA, fix the mitochondrial function of the body, your gut, get everything operating correctly at a very high level. But once they feel it, I've learned to communicate differently with people. I can't tell them anything besides I can communicate to them that if they care about the environment, which everybody does, and cares about their own children and their health, they'll listen to you. And most people, through the way the world's kind of operating through trauma and fear and all the craziness that goes on, almost don't care enough about their own health to take that into their own hands, right? But if they listen on the educational part on soil and children and health, true vitality, that all of a sudden light bulbs start to go off when we take, the Iowa lakes that were closed last winter, the beaches, 14 of them, for instance, for an E. coli outbreak in all of these lakes across the state of Iowa. What's Iowa known for? Agriculture. What's it known? The inputs, massive amounts of chemicals, right? Obviously, when it rains, the streams, the creeks, the rivers get filled up with a lot of these chemicals, run off into the lakes, and what does nature do? It fights back, an explosion of bacteria to digest these problems and try to get that water, that lake, that ecosystem back into a state of health. And so when you go to the doctor with an infection, a bacterial or fungal infection, that's nature saying you're a defective organism and we want to digest you and put you back in the ground where you belong and start over. So what's causing it? Nutrient deficiencies and toxicities, pretty much always across the board. So if we address those things, if we know how to remove the toxins and put the really high grade minerals, vitamins, the real nutrients, not the synthetics, not the rock dust, we're talking the real stuff after it's been digested by biology, that's when magic starts to happen.
And can you kind of make that delineation or talk a little bit more about that, the real stuff versus, the rock dust, and is some of that to do with actually getting it into the GI tract and getting it through the digestive system, or what is the kind of operating procedure there?
Yeah, so if we think about geology, biology, and natural chemistry, and what happens through rocks releasing inorganic minerals, for instance, up into the environment, into the soil layers, and then biology, the microorganisms, if they're there in diversity that they should be, which many places we've decimated with chemicals, of course. But if they are there in diversity, they have the ability to bond those inorganic metals with carbon, and then they become what's called an organic metal or a colloid mineral, and then that springs forth life, those types of activities, right? So that interaction between the inorganic metals, conversion to the organic metals, and then life happening. The Hawaiian Islands, for instance, nothing but inorganic metals, that those volcanic islands. But biology from the ocean splashing on it, one seed landing on it, with no organic matter, and voila, you've got plants, you've got jungles. Now you're creating organic matter, so life springs forth that way, right?
Yeah. And you mentioned, kind of the state of things as far as all of these chemicals basically, and then generally the solution to the problem created by the chemicals is more chemicals, right?
Yeah, the biology that has the ability to do this by decimating them, you get a reaction from nature with an explosion of a few, of the bacteria and fungus, the infections in the soil or the plants or whatever. And then they hammer it more with more antibiotics, and it's I always picture farmers, conventional ag folks, and doctors and scientists literally holding back a wall of nature it's about to take over, right? It's like a jungle that's about to take over. And if we were to all die today, Clay, let's be honest, and mankind was to disappear, nature's going to take over with bacterial and fungal infections to digest the problems that we created until those are digested, broken down, and then everything's going to go back into balance. That's what nature does, right? So, yeah, I would like to get it addressed before we all go away.
Yeah, same. And nature always bats last, right? So I mean,
Yes.
I would say God's design is undefeated. So there are, it's going to come through. You're going to have to pay the piper eventually, right? I mean, I could probably throw another cliche in there, but
Right.
but I
Yeah.
will move on past that. So what's your solution? How are you approaching this, combating this? And let me back up before we get there. Do you think that there is an awakening happening? Where do you think we are on that journey? Are there more and more people? What percentage of the people are thinking, hey, maybe there's something wrong here? All these closed beaches represent a problem. Maybe this is related to the way that we've been farming for the last 80 years. Do we need to make some changes? Where do you think we're at on that journey?
Well, I think mankind has been trained to be surface thinkers, that there's a problem and they just observe it as a problem and they don't know what to do about it. They don't think about it. They don't ask why. What I would say to all of your viewers is always ask, and you've got an intelligent viewership. They're intelligent people. And a lot of them are the people that say, why is this happening? Why is this cow sick? Why is this animal sick? Why am I having problems? Why do my joints hurt? All these different things. So Americans have sat in their pain long enough to start asking those why questions. And I urge them to do that more. So as far as, the way we observe the environment and the way the divine blueprint, our creator, the master plan is to break down those minerals and for, weeds, herbs to show up in the soil that's mineral nutrient deficient and pull those out of the atmosphere. Of course, they talk about the tap roots being deep and pulling calcium and all that. Sure, they do that, but they also pull massive amounts of nutrients out of the atmosphere so that when they die and decompose, they put them back into the soil. Do I have 100 years or 200 years to wait for soil to heal? No, I don't. And I'm assuming nobody else does. So if we take the diversity, a human body needs 60 plus minerals alone. That's 2/3 of our nutrient uptake, right? Along with the amino acids, essential fatty acids, the vitamins that we need, of course, that we can't produce ourselves. So if we take the diversity of minerals and put them down in the soil with a massive diversity of biology, we're talking hundreds and hundreds of types of bacteria, mycelium, and extremophiles from extreme environments around the world. They have the ability for every element, for every toxin, there is biology addressing that, right? So it doesn't matter if it's a synthetic, a forever chemical, a heavy metal, radiation contamination. It literally doesn't matter. There's always microbes that will deal with that and break those down and sequester them for a certain amount of time until they might be needed at a later time. That's the balance that's in the soil, right? So when you do that and we put down the diversity of nutrients and the biology, we've sped the timeline up is what we've done through just observing how things are supposed to work. And we're just assisting, we're boosting nature. Once we install it, we let it go and let it take over. And therefore, that's a lot of the data that we've gotten back on forever chemicals and radiation contamination, and nutrient-dense food being grown with no contamination in it by the time the tests are done, 2 to 4 months later.
Let's take a quick break and hear a word from our sponsor today, Kip Fladland Horsemanship. Do you want to transform your relationship with your horse from one of contention to one of partnership? A Kip Fladland clinic is a great place to start. They take place throughout the summer and early fall across the country. You can learn colt starting, the fundamentals of groundwork, horsemanship, cow work, and ranch roping, among other invaluable skills. If you're interested in taking the next step in the relationship with your horse, head on over to kfhorses.com to find a clinic near you. And if you're interested, you can join my family and I at the Kip Fladland Clinic taking place near Rapid City, South Dakota, June 19th, 20th, and 21st. What's the process? What are you guys leading people through? What are they using actually on the soil? What's the scale of, is it for gardeners, for farmers, ranchers? What's the what are you guys focusing on?
Yeah. My focus was, after a lot of meetings over the years with ag folks, university ag department leaders, folks like that. I had meetings, Clay, where they were looking at me, the professors were looking at me and going, we don't necessarily agree or even acknowledge that what you say is true. And so I was sitting there coming from originally the human health and performance side, saying it's the environment is trashed. It's absolutely trashed. And I'd walk out of the university ag department going, I'd be more confused than when I went in, saying, how is it possible that the experts don't even know what I'm talking about? This is some really alarming stuff. And then on some of the substances that I would bring with me, the elements and things like that, they say, we've never tested anything organic at this university in our lives. Like, we've never done that. So they didn't even really know how to begin testing, right? The humates that we use, there's nutrients, of course, ocean nutrients, kelps. There's other components of nutrients, that the composts and the biodynamically prepared biology, and some other components from collections around different places. We've got quite a network of experts that are doing a lot. They're experts in mycelium or biology or humates or these different sources. So we put them together in a 0 to 5 acre box, a 5 to 10, 10 to 20, and 20 to 40 acre box for people to grow their own food, really, because I'm not going to change the conventional ag system. I don't have the power. I don't have the money. I don't want to do it. But what I can do is I can educate the general population on what their food should contain and what it shouldn't, and how it should taste and what it should do for you, right? So that was the easiest path, and that's working really well. We've got people all over the country, of course, and all over the world that are using our products, and things are picking up pace, and we're trying to keep up right now. But if anything, especially for the ag folks out there that are using chemicals a lot in their operations, they should at least be growing natural, chemical-free food in their gardens, so that they have that diversity, and also using supplements that have the ability to chelate and remove those toxins from their bodies so that they and their families can stay healthy. That's super important.
And so, that's one of the the concerns, right, of where we're at in our food system, is many farmers don't eat what they grow, for a host of reasons. And so if, at that point, is it really legitimate to say we're feeding the world if you won't eat what you grow?
Right.
And honestly, we do a lot is we make biofuel out of what we grow. We make oil or syrup out of what we grow, and I think you and I are on the same page about what that's doing to us, right?
Sure. Yeah.
The oils and the syrups and all those kinds of things. So your focus is on equipping them to grow the food that they're eating in a way that makes it more nutrient dense. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food actually is a real statement. That's a historic you know, and it actually is the truth when you know how to do that, how to reinstall, all of the nutrients that are needed. And again, a human being needing those 60 plus minerals alone, and 90 overall, nutrients, it's the exact same thing for honeybees. It's the exact same thing for cows because the earth is one organism. We just happen to be part of that organism. So to think that we're different than the organism itself, the host organism, would be very naive of us to think, right? So the more we toxify the host organism, the more it reflects in the things that we're seeing around us in the public with their health issues, right? And so historical perspectives are also very important. In Weimar Germany around 1915 is when widespread agriculture chemical practices started. By the 1930s, Weimar Germans their health was in the gutter. All the exact same things that we're dealing with today, the physical, mental, hormonal problems, and roughly about the same percentage of the population ended up on pharmaceutical chemicals. We know where that ended up. And so, knowing history, real history, we have the ability, we have the intelligence and the compassion to change the path.
And you think about that, I mean, some of the agrochemical companies, we're German, still are. But then you also think, some of those are also pharmaceutical companies, aren't they? And it starts
Sure.
some of those things start to add up, right?
Yeah. And the people within these corporations, the people downstream. Look, Clay, when I go and buy a loaf of bread that was grown with chemicals, I'm part of the problem.
Right.
I am absolutely part of the problem. I am not guilty or not innocent by any means. Do I do my best to absolutely grow my own food, not eat bread, not eat pasta, all these things that cause inflammation and that we're part of that process? 100%. I do my absolute best. I spend as little money as possible supporting those systems as I can, and I do my best to buy grass-fed beef from a local guy. I do my best to buy at the farmer's market from people I know that actually grew the food with real nutrients and not synthetics, right? So that's how we have to spend our money. And by doing that, and everyone starting to do that, or a large portion of us, the systems will not support themselves. Their weight will collapse them.
What do you mean by that? The systems, if everybody goes to buying food locally, the system won't support that? Is that what you're saying?
The systems of going to the grocery store and not even being able to find real organic food, for instance, right? You can go to most grocery stores and they have a tiny little area for organically grown vegetables and fruit in the produce section, and the grass-fed beef is, astronomically priced, one would think, by standards of Americans right now. If we just simply don't support that, if we grow our own food as much as possible, which most people have enough space to do that, that they can learn how to can. Clay, I got punched in the head for a living. I know how to can food, right? So nobody else has an excuse. But the systems, of the massive conventional agriculture food growing processes are simply not going to be supported. They're going to have to switch if they want to stay in business.
Let's take a quick break and hear a word from our sponsor today, Sunshine Bible Academy.
I started at Sunshine Bible Academy as a freshman in 1984. My older brother and sister were already attending SBA, so I believe that the choice for me to attend had already been made by my parents. As a freshman, my English teacher, Mrs. Motter, read a chapter of Proverbs every morning for our homeroom. In freshman Bible class, we memorized Isaiah 53. I had been taught the Bible at home and at church, yet I believe I received a Bible education at SBA. A biblical worldview and lifelong friends were made at SBA certainly shaped future life decisions and contributed to our decision to send our two sons to SBA for high school.
If you want to find out more, you can check out sunshinebible.org. So you talk about a 0 to 5 acre box, 5 to 10 acre box, and so on. Is it a protocol? What's going to come to a person if they decide to work with you guys?
Yeah, they'll get a box with 7 different components in them. They have to be separated until you put them in water and bloom the biology and activate, of course, and put the nutrients in the water as well. It's a foliar spray. So there's the diversity of biology, of course, in every package, but there's also 77 colloid minerals, which are already carbon bonded. They've already been digested by biology and converted naturally from a very unique source that most, for instance, humates. I'll talk about humates real quick so people understand a little bit more. Humates can come from leonardite, soft coal, dead seafloor beds, bogs, places all around the world. The source that we use for our boxes for this is the most bioavailable, most water-soluble, most bioactive humate that we've been able to find. And it's the highest quality that's out there. Most humates won't mix with water the way this does. It's 98.9% water-soluble. Amazing compound. And there's no hydrochloric acids or any chemicals used in the process of pulling the fulvic humic out of the source, right? So that's super important. Then, because a lot of will use chemicals to extract, which then throws the biology into a tizzy, and then they have to pasteurize it and kill the life in it and really screw it up pretty badly in a couple different ways. We don't do that. We'll never do that. Very important to us. And then, of course, the 90 essentials from the ocean. The ocean is the healthiest place on Earth. And then massive amounts of the biology, as I was talking about, the bacteria, the mycelium, and the extremophiles, so that we've gotten to the point, Clay, where the toxins are coming down in the rain because it's, the evaporation is pulling the toxins up. It's coming down everywhere. People are having trouble growing heirloom seeds, heirloom gardens, all these things. So that's what we're there to fix with these components and turn everything around for them. Are there dry spreads out there they could use, humates and other long-term nutrients for the soil? Yes, that's stuff that we talk to people and consult with people about as well. But just a foliar spray alone on your garden, your orchards, and your lawns and things like that, yeah, you'll notice a great response, a huge response.
Larger scales. What do you think about larger scales? Talking to people that are on a grass-based system with their livestock. What are you thinking for them? Do you have recommendations or directions that you point them?
Yeah, mineral diversities, dry spreads to put down. There's a couple different sources that we recommend to people when we consult with them, things like that. And then inoculating it with the biology that we have in our boxes, of course, and the nutrients for the quick snap, bringing things back to life quickly. But yeah, the dry spreads combined with the foliar spray is really how to do it. And people can do it either quickly if they really want to go all in right away, or they can do it gradually over a period of time, make it more affordable, those sort of things. But putting all those minerals, all those nutrients back, and then putting reinstalling the biology into the soil and letting it work its magic, that's really, it's fun to watch. It's fun to get, have people call me and go, the cows are stacking right on top of everything you guys sent me. So, that's nice.
Yep. And many people that I've talked to over the years have said, start on your best ground, right? Or you've already got that biology working there. Now, kind of give it the pour kerosene on the fire, to make it go better. Would you agree with that?
I tell people, start on the worst absolute spot that you can find. I want them to start there so they can see what happens.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's super important because, I guess in coaching, things like that I've done you're only as good as your worst student, right? So I start with that and let's see what happens. And usually some pretty magical things start to take place.
Yeah. Well, it's the UFC, right? It's mixed martial arts, great. You're an excellent boxer, but what happens when you get taken down? Now what?
Yeah.
So start on you at least need some takedown defense if you're gonna try and rely on your striking, right?
Yeah. No, and yeah, when I think about cows and things like that, one of the gentlemen that's on our team out in New Mexico, when I went to visit his location, his cows, this is just for the folks out there that are cow folks, that are cattle folks, his cows looked like they belonged in the Westminster Kennel Show. Their fur shined so much, and they were so extremely muscular that he took great pride in what he was doing to his soil. And so the compaction wasn't there. He could drive a tractor over and over and over on the same soil. It refused to compact because of the paramagnetics in the soil. It was just amazing to witness what could be done with animals. And this guy is very good at what he does, and he's one of the contributors to these boxes, right?
Hmm. Yeah. So yeah, talk to me about the development process. I mean, we've talked a little bit about it, but kind of where you started and some of the things that have been added over time and kind of the learning process that's been involved.
Yeah, and what in my own process anyway, it's been long, of course, several decades, but you know, I first started researching really heavily for agriculture applications, humates, of course, and also for human health and performance, for athletic performance, um, and got into the nutrients in the ocean, got into the biology, dug into all of that, all research through time, the history of the people that had been working with biology, reading their books, really researching archaea, researching the extremophiles, the biology, and the mycelium, and slowly putting this all together. And then I'd run into someone, or someone would say, "I need to introduce you to this person," and the network, continually built. I was introduced to Doc Will Spencer, who's a homeopathic doctor and also, organic or biodynamic agriculture expert. And I tell you what, he was over the target with pretty much everything he was doing. We had a 6-week when we first met each other in person. He was on my podcast at one time, 3 years ago, whatever it was. But we did a 6-week, basically a bus tour in his huge RV across the country, meeting with ag leaders and indigenous leaders across the country, having conversations. I was coming at it from the human side more than anything for that educational tour. He was coming at it from the soil environmental side, and we were making big impacts with people. People were starting to pay attention and listen to us. So Will's been very instrumental in my life, as have several other people, of course. But it's all come together through just a lot of people working in their own areas and then discovering each other. Really, is how this has all happened.
Yeah, let's define a few terms you've used a couple of times here. Humates. Tell me about that. Where do they come from? What are they?
Yeah, so the sediment layers, the ancient dead seafloor beds, the humates, and leonardite, the soft coal, coal itself, the bogs in North America, the swamps, the decomposing plant matter, the nutrients of the decomposing plant matter, and how that's concentrated in these sediment layers, that it packs a massive punch. Now, the dead seafloor beds and other sources are not what I would call in an organic state, right? Not a bioavailable state. So those, when you spread those in dry form, you have to apply the diversity of biology to break those down and make them available for the grasses or whatever you're feeding to your cattle, right? Other sources are already bioavailable. They're already and they're not at the fossilized layer. They're just above the fossilized layer, where they have the massive amount of concentration of nutrients and biology, but they haven't solidified. They haven't turned to rock yet.
Certainly. Extremophiles. That was another one that was new on me.
Yeah, what people can research are archaea, and so there's hundreds of thousands of different types of them. When we look at extreme environments, Chernobyl, for instance, extremophiles would show up and eventually start digesting, and along with the mycelium, high saline, high heat, low heat, cold temperatures, high acidity. These extremophiles have the ability to work with the heavy metals, the inorganic metals, the synthetics, and break them down properly or bond them with carbon and make them either less harmful, sequester them, or convert them into something that's actually very usable.
Is that would that be like a water bear? Would that be an example?
Well, they're technically called archaea.
Tardigrade is the technical name. I had to look it up.
Okay. And so, and you think about the bacteriophiles even. So there's organisms that police the organisms.
Yeah.
and keep those populations under control, things like, so the diversity of biology is so vast and so massive. But think about the damage that we've done to the environment with, just in phosphorus-based fertilizers. There's cadmium, there's arsenic, there's lead, there's uranium, there's all these things that are in there. Well, we have to have a diversity of biology to break that stuff down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then the last one, it's been talked about, but it's been quite a while on the podcast. So we talked about biodynamics. Where did you get introduced to that? What's going on with some of that?
I was introduced to it through reading a lot and listening to even Rudolf Steiner stuff, which is wild if you've ever suffered through that, which that's how Will calls it as well. But more than anything, measuring the energetics of anything, right? Not just the heavy metal content or the nutrients or, any of these other things that we're looking for, but the energetic activity, the vitality of something. So the vitality of soil, that there's a lot of activity, a lot of interaction between the organisms and the inorganic metals or forever chemicals or whatever being broken down. That is the vitality that's happening in soil, the energy.
Yeah, certainly. And then kind of just circling back full circle here, you talked about, your early life and always feeling like you were breathing through a straw and those things, and then kind of getting that healed up. What was the actual operating mechanism that helped you? Was it gut health? Was it a combination of things? What was going on there that helped kind of get you over that hump?
Well, it was understanding that I had to get the toxins out of my cells, and I had to put the things into my body to repair damaged DNA, which heavy metals, inorganic metals, and synthetic chemicals have the ability to do, to damage our DNA. A lot of those. So a lot of antioxidants, very high grade concentrated antioxidants, and some colloidals, silver and copper, assisted me greatly. And it literally took only 10 days for me to repair was a lifetime of breathing issues and other health related things to the breathing issues. So things turned around for me really quickly. And so a lot has been added to that, of course, but finding the real concentrated elements and nutrients that we truly need is imperative, I think, for everybody out there to fully understand their potential and what they can, achieve in their life. I mean, had I not discovered this, had I not had the great desire to be a great athlete, to have great endurance, to be able to breathe correctly, I would have never discovered this. And it wouldn't have led me down this 40-year path of, I can't get off this train, right? Because I want to evangelize this to anyone who's struggling. And I don't like to see people struggle with their health. So that's really how this all happened. And it's not that hard. You just have to love yourself a little bit, as much as you love your cows, as much as you love your farm, as much as you love your soil, and do the same thing for it.
Yeah, no, I understand that for sure. So I grew up in western South Dakota, Belle Fourche, South Dakota, to be exact, just outside of Belle Fourche, South Dakota. The second largest employer of people in Belle Fourche outside of agriculture is the American Colloid Company, and they are miners of bentonite. And so I've heard that term colloid. You're helping me connect it to colloidal today. But what are some of those? Is that what you're talking about when you talk about the colloids as bentonites, or are there other things that fit into that category as well?
Well, it just comes down to any inorganic metal that's been converted to an organic and bonded with carbon through the biology, right?
Yep.
So colloid is when it takes place in the soil with the biology. Colloidal is when it takes place through electrolysis and altering the molecular structure of it. So, the silver, for instance, one company will take a strand of silver as thin as your hair and run it into purified water that's got 80,000 volts running through it. And it fractures the molecules of the hair and suspends them and restructures them so that it actually does you good, right? And so any element, any metal can be converted into a colloid version through biology. That's the beauty of it.
So, and just kind of as we point towards wrapping up, I guess maybe what I'd like to give you an opportunity to do is kind of set out the path forward for somebody who's coming out of a conventional system in agriculture. You know, is it kind of 40 acres at a time on these larger scales, use these products, and then the management going forward? Do you have any ideas or thoughts on what that looks like to make sure, hey, we don't slip back into the same issues we were already dealing with?
Well, I just had Monty Bottens from Ag Solutions Network on my podcast, actually, and he and I have become very good friends over the years. Guy that gave me my first opportunity actually to speak at an agriculture convention about the importance of what I believe in. And so what I would say is Monty has systems because he's got so much experience, has a 2,500 acre operation himself, all those sort of things on a big scale. But yeah, he and I both, we echo each other in terms of, I want to see things turn back a lot to grass. I want to see cattle everywhere.
Yeah.
I want to see livestock back, on the American plains doing what they're supposed to be doing and creating nutrient dense meat and products for human beings. Right. So start over, start with a small amount, put down seed, put down the minerals, put down the biology, let it take off, raise some cows. Absolutely. And go from there. And once you start on the journey, there's no turning back.
Yeah, no doubt. And then do you find people using the products on an existing row crop system too? Are they using it in place of something else, or do you guys shy away from that?
There's been a lot of testing done, we'll say that, but really more on the vegetable growing, the almond growers, a lot of that sort of stuff. The big food growing operations, grapes, for instance, tomatoes, all of those things, with huge upticks in Brix ratings and uniformity of ripening, much larger yields, all of those things have taken place. It's the infrastructure that we need where train loads full of the minerals need to be moved to mixing locations, co-ops, so to speak. We need massive amounts of digesters across this country producing real biology, not GMO weaponized biology. And turning the biology back loose onto the environment and bringing it all back. And we can do it. If we just had a little help with infrastructure, we can do it. And
you mentioned a couple of times your podcast. Where would people go to find that?
People can go to pjmiletich.com, and there's an entire page there with my podcast. My old podcast, which was a decade of talking about the problems that were coming, well, we're already there. So that's why I switched from that podcast to providing nothing but, what our version of solutions would be, I guess.
Yeah, very good. And if people want more information, they can go to soilsaviors.org/workingcows. You use code WORKINGCOWS10 to get 10% off, I'm guessing, is what that will get you.
Yeah. And no, we encourage people to grow their own food. For all those farmers and ranchers out there, make sure you're growing your own food, canning your own food, changing your life, and becoming less dependent on the systems.
Pat, thanks for your time today.
Thank you, Clay.
Very good stuff there with Pat. Really appreciate him taking the time to join me and share about their process and the project that they've been engaged in. Really appreciate the work that they've been doing. Looking forward to next week on the Working Cows podcast to be sharing with you a conversation I had with Gabe White from Herd Advisor about the tools that he has developed so that you can do your records in the cab of your tractor or your pickup right after you have treated a calf, tagged a calf, treated a cow, whatever you've done. You can do it right from the seat of your pickup with your gloves on. Don't even have to take your phone out of your pocket. So a pretty neat tool, and it goes way deeper than that. There's a lot more to it than that, and it's a very fully built out product that integrates well with other technologies and is just a really powerful tool for keeping records for livestock on your operation. So look forward to sharing that with you, coming your way real soon on another episode of the Working Cows podcast. We'll see you then.
We invite you to visit workingcows.net to subscribe to the show via iTunes or Stitcher. You'll also find detailed show notes pages, resources from our guests, and the industry leaders who have influenced them. For more ideas on putting your cows to work for you in a more profitable way, Tune in next week.